So last week I ran Shadow the Beakmen by Harley Stroh for a group of mine, and it was a really good time. It's a very good level 1 adventure, though it's not perfect. I do think this would be a good start to a campaign, or just a one-shot like I ran it, but there are some issues I do think that new GMs might struggle with, at least in the first part. The second part, which is the dungeon, is totally fine and perfect, but I do think there's a lot of changes you might need to make to the first part. But I will say, if you are looking for a classic pulpy DCC adventure, this is a fantastic one, and it's very easy to run this in a one-shot. This is one of those ones where I read through it and I was like, oh, this is easily like a 3-hour game, 4 hours if it's gonna be really long. Sometimes when you read DCC scenarios, you're like, oof, I might be able to get this into a one-shot. I might have to cut off certain parts. I might need to do whatever just to bring it down. But this one, except for the changes I'm going to talk about, you could easily run as a one-shot. But we're going to get into spoilers right now, so if you don't want spoilers, I'd say just get out of here. So this adventure takes place in a small coastal village at night. The players are intended to sort of stop through here before they go to their real destination. It could be like a big city, or it could be like, you know, a quest, or whatever it might be. And this is where the problem starts, right at the beginning. Because the beginning is really good. It starts on media res, super action heavy, but basically the town is under attack by Beakmen. What's on the tin is exactly what happens basically in this scenario. With DCC, you might not be a heroic group of characters. You might be all pulp adventure heroes, which is a lot of times what DCC characters are. So I actually had 2 characters in the game when they were playing. They're like, where are we going here? It's not really our problem. We're seeing the town's on fire. Something's going on over there. We were only going to stop in here for the night, but we could just keep moving on the road and keep going on to our next destination if we really want to, which isn't too much of an issue when you're doing a campaign. If that's what the players do, I mean, it is boring, but I mean, DCC is so brutal, it makes sense that players would be like, oh, well, you know what? Not my problem. I'm going to go somewhere else. But for a one-shot, obviously, if you have a good group, they know this is where we're going. They might just mull it over like my group did as a sort of way of role-playing, but they're going to end up going there no matter what. But I'm at a point of confidence now in my GMing that if players decide that they're going to sort of veer off of what we're supposed to be doing for that one-shot or two-shot, whatever it is, I will straight up just break immersion and be like, all right, guys, if you don't want to do this, I guess I'll see you next time. So with most good groups, that shouldn't be an issue, but just keep that in mind that you might want something here in this village that the players need to find. Like maybe they have a friend, or there's a relative, or like a family friend, whatever it might be, that's like, no, we gotta find out what's going on in this village, because I do have some level of investment of actually going in here. But outside of that, I actually really do like this opening. I love the idea of players sort of coming off the road at night. It feels very much like a movie start where, you know, it's just darkness and a group of your characters are moving through. Stuff is just going wild with this town being on fire. When they enter the village, probably from the northwest side, they'll immediately have an encounter with this big sort of croc knight riding a crocodile, which is basically just this big beefy beak man with like armor on that's also just riding this massive crocodile creature that's going after this man-at-arms. And that's their way to sort of, you know, try and save the guy. If they did, my players end up not saving him in time. He just got absolutely messed up. If your players do end up saving that man-at-arms, he's a perfect little extra level 0 if they need an extra person, and also just works as somebody who can give some information of what's going on here. So even though conceptually the village being attacked and the players getting right into it right at the beginning of the session is really cool, I think the way it's laid out in the book isn't great. And even when I was reading it before I even ran it, I was like, there's no way I'm doing it the way the book is doing it. I was going to follow it somewhat, but I found in play, I just basically had to throw everything out and just do my own thing and make it much more narrative. And basically the problem with this is that, so as the players enter the village, what's happening is that there's this big obelisk that's coming in from the water right on the shore side. The shore is on the opposite end of where the players are. So this is where all these Beakmen come out, and that obelisk, that big thing coming out of the water, that is the dungeon. The players are going to want to go into there and sort of just go through, and that's basically the whole thing. And we'll get to that once we get to that part. But right now, all they're told is something big is coming that way. There's so much chaos and smoke. It's also raining, and it's all this like darkness and people screaming and running back and forth. So they really can't tell what is going on. So when they heard that, their immediate thought wasn't go straight for that light and the weird thing coming out of the ocean. They couldn't really see what was going on that way. And the book says from where they are, it takes them 10 rounds to get from where they are through the village to the obelisk. Now that's a lot of rounds, and every round has stuff in it. It's not just like, oh, you roll and here's nothing, just smoke and fire, there's nothing. It's like there's supposed to be stuff going on constantly, you know, whether it's peasants that are being saved and that sort of thing. But I think the problem with having that 10 round system is that if the players don't have an actual objective they're going for, they kind of just don't really know what's going on. They end up just jumping inside an old shack, just trying to be like, okay, what's going on here? They got a peasant who's running by, just try and question them, and they basically didn't give them much information. They're like, we're being attacked and things are going crazy. Please let go of me. I'm trying to run away from here. So they're basically just hiding in that shack, just sort of waiting for something to happen because they didn't really know what they were supposed to be doing. They knew they had to go somewhere, and that obviously that light coming from the ocean was probably, in a meta sense, what they're going to be dealing with next. But with the description they got from it, because it's so dark, they assume, oh, maybe it's coming towards me in the village. Maybe we should stay away from it because it sounds like a really scary thing and we have no idea what's going on. Plus, that first encounter they had with the Croc Knight and the Croc almost TPK'd the party. It was really good after that, but that first encounter really scared them. They could not roll to save their life. The wizard cast magic missile as the first spell cast they could do, and they fumbled. It was a really rough fight at first, and they eventually got through it. But after that encounter, they were like, okay, whatever we're dealing with, we have to deal with more than one of those things. We might just totally die. So I would say just learn from my mistakes with this, is that I think if you do run this as a one-shot or as part of a campaign, I would say have some level of investment in there, because the players, first off, didn't really care about the village. They didn't really know what they're supposed to do in here. So it led to a little bit of things grinding to a halt just for a little bit as they sort of got their bearings. I guess it does add to the chaos of what the hell's going on with this battle, which I think narratively on the GM side sounds cool, but I think from a player side, that could be somewhat frustrating, as it's more just you losing engagement as a player because you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. I don't know what the GM wants me to do. I'm not sure what the next steps are. Now, my players didn't get frustrated or anything like that. I'm just thinking that since this was a DCC day adventure, and maybe a lot of new GMs grab this as their first DCC game to run, this could have been a bit of an intimidating spot, or it could have been one of frustration for the GM being like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. There's 10 rounds supposed to go through here. My players are kind of bored and confused and frustrated with what they're supposed to be doing. So I just want to keep that in mind. You're going to want to change it. Basically, what I did was once they were hiding in that shack, I had the obelisk sort of become way more apparent, because what's supposed to happen once they get through the town and get to the shoreline, they'll see this little goblin-y, shadowy kind of figure doing some sort of ritual, and the obelisk will open up and a bunch of these Beakmen will just start pouring out, and then he'll lead them into the village. So what I did was, instead of going through the 10 rounds of them going through it, I basically had them see the obelisk come through, the smoke kind of parted somewhat, and they were able to see the door open up, and the same sort of thing happened, but from the safety of the shack they were in. And then I basically just had them do some sneak rolls to get there without being spotted. They did get seen by some Beakmen, fought them off, and then went inside the obelisk. So I made it a lot more streamlined, which you might just want to do. I would say though, even if you do a good job and do a better job than me of actually following the book and doing it per rounds, I would still say 10 rounds is an extreme amount of rounds to be doing this in a DCC game, in my opinion. I think that's way too much. I think if this was a village that you already had established, if they were coming back to the village, I think it would work better than having the 10 rounds where it's like, oh no, we know like the baker shop and this thing, because then you might actually have some stuff to throw in yourself that the players would know as landmarks of the town. So that could work a lot better in that sense. But for a new village that they have no pre-existing relationship to, I would say 5 rounds max is what I would do for that. I don't think having 10 rounds as they roll through it is very interesting. So just keep that in mind, because it is really cool and I do like it, and I do think I'm going to start using more openings like this, because the players were immediately in the action and things were immediately popping off. There wasn't any sort of slow, oh, here's a quest and go walk off there and here's this thing and oh, we're going to search this little thing. It's like, nope, you're in it. Survive and get through this. So it was very good for that, which I think is a really good introduction to new people for DCC, because DCC is very snappy usually, so having it right at the beginning should draw people in. I just think it could have been executed a little bit better. So once they enter the obelisk, that's the actual dungeon crawl for this adventure, and I love this adventure. It's super simple, and I really love that for a one-shot. Sometimes when I'm looking at running a game and I'm just in the mood to run something, I'll just straight up go to the map of the adventure, and if it looks like a horrifying maze, I'm like, nope, not today. This might be for a campaign or a longer game or something. Not doing this. This one was perfect. I looked at it. I will say the map has a weird illusion, and I cannot tell if this is on purpose or if this is just my eyes, but it has this weird MC Escher-esque sort of feel to it. The way the stairs look when you first look at them, it makes it look like the map is upside down, and I cannot tell if that's on purpose because the obelisk is this weird otherworldly obelisk, but I think it's really cool. Once my eyes adjust to it, it's fine, but it's just something I thought I'd point out because I thought it was very interesting. This dungeon is super action heavy. Basically, most of the rooms have a combat encounter. There's not really many traps, which I like. I'm also a fan of just having lots of combats because they move really fast and they're pretty nuts. I'm not gonna go through every room, even though there's not that many rooms to go through. You have one room that has like all these pupae of these weird Beakmen. Basically what's happening is the Beakmen are from like this water world, you know, not the one with Kevin Costner, a different water world. And they go through different parts and grab people and then turn them into these Beakmen. So you have one room where it's all these like sort of people being turned into Beakmen. They also have this one room with this weird grotesque demon that they've held here that is like a spider demon, and she's really grotesque looking, and she can be very helpful to the party by giving them items or giving them some information on what's in the obelisk as long as they free her. But she is also a demon, so if they don't make a deal before they free her, she'll just disappear, which I love. I love having demons in games like that because I do think when you have a demon, they are an enemy. Even when they're working with you, they are an enemy, and I like that, where it's like, no, they're not going to attack. Obviously, a level 1 party would die to an actual tier 3 demon or whatever the hell she is. She's insane. I looked at her stats and I was like, if they attacked her and she fought back if she was able to, she has like 8 action dice and a shitload of hit points. Like, she would murder the entire party. But I do like having demons in this, and I also think, again, very good introduction to DCC, because in DCC, you can have stuff like this in the first game, where you have literally a demon that you are communing with and trying to barter with. There's a warlord who has a ancient crocodile who's hiding in the water, who will jump out at them if they try and attack and get close to him. My players ended up being like, there's something in there, and they sort of snuck around and looked in, and they couldn't see anything. They could see like some sort of big shadow, and they're like, okay, you know what? One player had enlarge, and he just decided to use it in reverse with reduce, and sort of just close that gap and keep it in there, which worked out really well. It almost didn't. Things almost got really bad, but they ran out of that room as soon as possible. Once they killed the warlord, they were like, nope, I don't want to deal with whatever's in there. Let's just keep moving out. And one of the other highlights is there's this room with 3 basins. I think they're green, red, and blue. And each one has a different stat that they'll boost by a d4. But if they fail the save, they actually get their stat reduced down to a 6 instead of getting a nice boost to it. What's funny, though, is that if they do already have that stat being a 6 or lower, they actually get some permanent luck, which I think is really funny, because essentially what's happening is the gods laugh at your misfortune. So have a little bit of luck there, my little buddy. That to me is so DCC, where it's just like, no, like, fuck you, but also, here you go. Basically, the last 2 rooms of this obelisk is a room full of wooden beakmen who are just there in these pods just getting healed up. And the last room is that little shouty figure that I mentioned before at the beginning of the obelisk. This is his actual true form here. He was just astral projecting to help the beakmen, sort of get into town and sort of command them and show them where to go. Here's his actual form. He is still like a little goblin guy, which I think is cool. I do love, big bad evil guys who are actually just like small little evil guys. And he's got this really cool sort of boss fight mechanic where he has this lamp and he has these shadows that come off the wall and fight for him, and the shadows get stronger every round as he cranks the lantern faster. But that didn't matter in my game, because in the last 2 rooms, what ended up happening was, so across this entire scenario, the players will come across these different creatures. Some of the beakmen will have them where they have either like javelins or basically big spears. They have these sort of like, green like kryptonite or like warpstone like rocks. And you can use those for extra damage, but you can also use them up to bring your spell up 1 in the dice chain. So they had a few of these by the end point. So what the elf ended up doing was destroying 2 of these to bring up to a d30, and then invoking Bobugbables to basically get the highest thing they could get as a spell burn like crazy, and rolled like a 29 plus whatever they had. So they brought in this like demon toad avatar, which immediately cast, I think, Cloud Kill or one of those AoE sort of poison cloud ones, and just killed literally all 14 beakmen in that second to last room in one go. And they only had like a minute on that demon toad, so they just booked it for the final room, which was just like literally like 15 feet away. And once they got in there, the other wizard cast enlarge as he was going first in the combat once they rolled for it. And he also had some of those little warpstone things that he destroyed, and also spellburned a bunch and got the highest he could get. So what they ended up doing was turning this giant demon toad avatar that was already like a broken fucking creature. I think I had like a plus 18 to attack, and just made it even bigger. So I was basically like, okay guys, we're not gonna even run this encounter as normal. You guys are winning this because you have literally this kaiju here. So we essentially described it as a group as how it got bigger and sort of destroyed and blew off the top of this obelisk and just sort of smashed down on this big bad evil guy and destroyed it. And it was absolutely fantastic. The players just fucking lost their mind, because I have never seen that before. I've seen players totally burn out 1 spell to its max. I've never seen anybody combine 2 spells together to make it even bigger. So it was a really awesome end, as they also grabbed onto the demon toad to get on it as it was jumping up and down on, the enemies. And I mentioned how all the beakmen kind of, fell over and died, and they saw the remaining peasantry and all that just running for the hills, because they are seeing this like borderline apocalyptic event happening as they see this giant demon toad sort of just growing and appearing and just destroying everything beneath it. So it was a really, really fantastic session. The players loved it. It was crazy. It was really awesome. I had a new player DCC there, so I thought it was a great way to show them what you can do with this game. And I feel like this is a really good scenario for new players, for new GMs as well. I just think that first part needs some tweaking. You can try running as is and let me know how it goes. I would just personally say to change it or mess with it somewhat that works for you if you think you need to. But yeah, that's Shadow of the Beakmen. It was a really good time. Very simple dungeon, very easy to run. I highly recommend it. Very, very good pulpy action. It doesn't need much prep. There is a VTT pack, which I did use, which was really, really perfect. I've been messing with Foundry a lot more. I'm trying to like get my Foundry game up, so I was using that and it worked out great. The maps are really nice for it. There are a bunch of different Beakman tokens, which I really appreciate, so you do have some variety variety in how the Beakmen look. So I put those down. It wasn't just, 20 of the same guy. I was able to have like 5 or 6 different types of Beakmen just put down without, adds a little bit to make him feel a little bit different, not have your player's eyes glaze over at, this clone army. But yeah, that's Shadow of the Beakmen. I highly recommend it. This will probably be my last short video for a while. I'm currently working on 2 really big videos, both one for DCC and one for Worlds Without Number. So I'm going to be focusing on those and trying to not, break it up too much with small videos like this. So if you don't see me for a little bit, maybe a few weeks or however long it might take me to get that first one out, that's why. And if you do want early access to videos, you can join me on my Patreon. Thanks to all my patrons who support me over there. They did vote on the next DCC video, which I'm very excited to do. I've been still writing the script for that. So thank you guys for that. We have some really good stuff coming. It's just going to take a while to get all out. And outside of that, just like a little bit of news, but I'm going to keep it pretty secretive, pretty close to the chest. I am beginning to work on the next actual play as well, but I will let you know now that one's going to be months out before we ever get to it. It will be a DCC one, just so you guys know, but it's not going to be here for a little while. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a good one, and stay safe out there.